We're giving away one free saber with every single saber purchase right now at theorysabers.com.
Anakin's backstory as told originally in 1981 in the Lucasfilm Story Group, which was really just George Lucas, Lawrence Kasdan, and Richard Marquand, will leave you speechless. Welcome to the video. Please leave a like on this, and I hope you all enjoy it. When George Lucas sat down in July 1981 with Lawrence Kasdan and Richard Marquand and Howard Kazanjian to hammer out the story of Return of the Jedi, something remarkable happened. Lucas gave them Anakin Skywalker's backstory, the fall of the Jedi Knight who became Darth Vader. This was over 20 years before Revenge of the Sith came out, and what's fascinating is that while a lot of the broad strokes match what we eventually saw, some details are very different. Let's start on page 20 of the Making of Return of the Jedi book. You know, I love covering this book. There's a lot of really amazing information in there, and not many normies know about this stuff, so I hope you appreciate it. George Lucas describes how Palpatine rose to power and seduced Anakin. He says, Anakin Skywalker starting hanging out with the Emperor, who at this point nobody knew was that bad, because he was an elected official. Richard M. Nixon was his name. He subverted the Senate and finally took over and became an imperial guy, and he was really evil. But he pretends to be a really nice guy. He sucked Luke's father into the dark side. So Palpatine was compared directly to Nixon, and Lucas is pretty blunt about it. In his mind, the Emperor was a manipulative politician, charming in public but rotting in private, and Anakin was pulled in by that false front. George continues, on his missions through the galaxies, Anakin has been going off doing his Jedi thing, and a lot of Jedi have been getting killed, and it's because they turn their back on him and he cuts them down. So this means that in 1981, George already saw Anakin as the executioner of the Jedi, betraying his comrades, killing them when they trusted him, basically Order 66, like we saw it much later. But George goes even further and it gets even darker. Lucas describes the suspicion at home with Anakin's wife realizing something was wrong. His wife begins to figure out that things are going wrong, and she confides in Ben, who is his mentor. Finally, Ben has to fight him, and he throws him down into a volcano, and Vader is all beat up. Now, when he falls into the pit, his other arm goes and his leg, and there is hardly anything left of him by the time the Emperor's troops fish him out of the drink. Now, George has been carrying this idea and this image since the 70s, and it survived all the way to Revenge of the Sith. And then, of course, comes the fallout, where Lucas describes Obi-Wan's guilt and the need to hide the twins. So everyone has to go into hiding. The Skywalker line is very strong with the Force, so Ben says. I think we should protect the kids because they may be able to help us right the wrong that your husband has created in the universe. Luke is sent to Tatooine, Leia to Alderaan. The skeleton of the prequel trilogy is right there in Lucas's own words in 1981. And what's fascinating here is the difference. For one, George says that Anakin's wife dies when Leia is only 2 years old, which of course connects to Leia's memory of her mother in Return of the Jedi. That's why in the final movie, she can tell Luke she died when I was very young and that she has memories of her. And George is quite explicit that Obi-Wan feels responsible. The other thing is, I think you can make Ben take blame for Vader. I should have given him more training. I should have sent him to Yoda, but I thought I could do it myself. It was my own pride in thinking that I could be as good a teacher as Yoda. I wish that I could stop the pestilence that I've unleashed on the galaxy. So in Lucas's mind, Obi-Wan's guilt wasn't just about losing a friend, it was about pride, believing he could train Anakin alone instead of sending him to Yoda. Now, when you compare this to Revenge of the Sith, you do see the consistency. The duel on the lava world, the betrayal of the Jedi, the Emperor is a manipulative politician, all of it is already here in 1981 and, of course, in the 70s in George's head. But you also see the changes. George hadn't yet settled on Padmé's fate, and Leia's memory of her mother is baked into this version of the story. So that kind of leaves the question, what did George have in mind for Padmé dying when Leia was age 2? Now, I imagine as time went on, of course, in the next 20 years, George was really fleshing out Anakin's character and his story, and really his upbringing. I feel like one of the things with Anakin that George had to do and really, make very clear was the level of attachment that Anakin had, because they could then twist that and turn it into some sort of mental condition that Anakin had to let go, which of course is impossible once he became a Jedi. And this of course would cause a lot of issues. Now, Anakin was extremely loyal to the Jedi, even going as far as kind of just abandoning his mother. Literally abandoning his mother, despite him having dreams and visions of her, which was by far one of his most accurate and powerful abilities that he had. And yet the Jedi just basically told him to ignore his thoughts and not really care about it. He was extremely loyal to them, extremely subservient, and kind of did whatever they asked. But when it came time for him to get some advice on something that was very important to him, they just kind of ignored him and told him to forget about it, and that essentially he shouldn't have these attachments. But they knew his case, they knew his scenario, they knew that he came to them when he was already 9 years old as a slave. It's not like he had a great life. He had a very, very traumatic life already. And to abandon all that and the people that were close to him through all of that difficulty is something that they should have taken into consideration and been a little bit more patient with him and a little more kind and loving. But in the end, we all know what happened, and George had that idea back in the 70s, where he voiced it in 1981. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about it. If you are grabbing a saber, check out theorysabers.com right now, and I'll see you all in the next video on Star Wars Theory. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Now, fulfill your destiny.